2012 draft is officially in the books. It's time for us to take a quick look back. While you can't really make any huge assessments right away, you got to start your judging somewhere. So let's start with the teams that we think fared well.
20 months, 2 football seasons before we know if any of these kids can play or not and if they can sustain what they do after their rookie years. But there's teams that get kids that you just didn't think would be there for them. They got tremendous value in almost every round. And the 2 teams that really jump out to me are the Cincinnati Bengals and the St. Louis Rams. I think the Bengals, for all the talk about Mike Brown's small scouting department and the reasons that they don't succeed, they seem to keep finding players every time they came up who, I didn't think would be there, and I thought they got some real value. But I've got to vote for the St. Louis Rams #1. I love what they did in the second round. They get Brockers in the first round. And you've got to remember, they also came away with the Washington Redskins first-round picks next year and the year after, and those could both be top 10 picks.
Yeah, they certainly needed talent across the board, filled many of those needs. I have questions about some of the character they took, some of the risks they took, but for me it was the Pittsburgh Steelers. For the most part they just sat back and collected football players. If Mike Adams, the second-round pick, a tackle with some first-round talent, if he makes it, if he stays with the program, it's a home run for me. David DeCastro is going to start for 8-10 years, be their next Alan Faneca. They get Chris Rainey later in the draft. Alameda Teamu, very hard to say, but very good football player, who I think is going to be Casey Hampton's long-term replacement. And Sean Spence, a great football player too. I just don't know exactly where he's going to play, so a little hard to say on him.
Just seemed like each time the Steelers came up, there was someone else sitting for him every time. I think the Philadelphia Eagles also did a pretty good job. They loaded up on defensive talent. A lot of real playmakers we'll see to help out on that side of the ball. If there are individual picks as opposed to teams as a whole that you liked, anything stand out for you?
Well, the one I still don't believe was Thursday night. David DeCastro sitting for Pittsburgh Steelers at 24. Just absurd. I don't know how that happened. And I understand people's concern about character and what the Rams may have done. But Janoris Jenkins sitting there in the middle of the second round, he may be the best cornerback in this. He could be Morris Claiborne if he stays out of trouble. And then they get Trumaine Johnson after they signed Cortland Finnegan. This team could end up by the end of this season with the best trio of cornerbacks in the NFL. So I love those picks.
I'm a little bit more conservative. I know we've talked politics in the past and maybe disagreed on some things. I'm going to go with the safe picks in round 1. The guys like Andrew Luck, Trent Richardson. I'm not saying RG3 isn't safe, but there's a little bit more of a known quantity with Luck. I think Morris Claiborne's going to be an outstanding football player. Mark Barron, further on down the line, even the last pick of the draft, the first round, David Wilson. I think there's no question he's going to be a good football player. So for me, safe picks with all those question marks, especially at the defensive line position, I've got to go with those as my favorite picks in this class, which I think is an average draft to be totally honest.
I think there were a couple of guys in the second round that really jumped out to me. Courtney Upshaw going to the Ravens seems like a perfect fit for them. You could see him really thriving there. And I really like LaMichael James going to the 49ers. It didn't seem like a position of need. It doesn't seem like something that made a lot of sense, but you have a lot of playmakers on a team. You think Harbaugh will find a way to use them.
Well, and the other pick that really you have to love is FLEENER falling to the Colts at the start of the second round to go with Andrew Luck. Fills a tremendous need. We know what Bruce Arians wants to do there on offense, and really a nice pick for them to add. They got the #1 pick overall, and then they get a security blanket to start the second round.
Yeah, you already know the chemistry's there. That's something from day one you're already going to have. So when we look back on the 2012 draft as a whole, what do you think the lasting impressions are going to be?
Well, it's going to be about all the trades in the first round. I don't think we've ever seen anything quite like that. And then you're going to look at some of these teams that just gambled like mad. We're either going to laugh our butts off at the Seattle Seahawks, or we're going to say, how'd they know what we didn't know? The Chicago Bears could be in the same situation. And it's going to be the quarterbacks. It's all going to come down to not only the first 2 quarterbacks taken, but how did they stack the rest of them, the next 4 or 5, because there's going to be 4 or 5 starting quarterbacks out of this draft.
I think at some point you're right, absolutely. So yeah, there's no doubt this is going to be the Andrew Luck RG3 draft, but I'm going to take it a step further and look compared to last year when you had Aldon Smith, Ryan Kerrigan, Von Miller, this bevy of pass rushers. Bruce Irvin was the highest rated pass rusher on this board, or at least in terms of where they were drafted. I'm not sure this is going to be a great pass rushing group at all. So to me, the lack of flash defensive players on the front line is what we're going to look back on also. I
think a couple, there were some fun stories as well. The crazy story of Mohamed Sanu, that he was pranked and thought he was going to the Bengals early on, ends up going to them anyways a day later. The Patriots to take a guy that was more of a rugby player than anything else. There's just so many good stories that happen throughout the draft. That's why it makes it so much fun. You can keep checking back here for all the draft coverage. We'll break down all the teams after it's all over right here at ProFootballWeekly.com.